lost my best friend to 23. She left her body and hovered above me. I saw no shadow, I looked around, searched every building and home that I found. I saw no shadow, but felt a glow. The warmth inside me, it kept me afloat. It felt like heaven, it found my bones and gave me comfort when I feel alone. Now you're gone, I'm alone. I guess it's time to get better. Through the pain, I will go alone. If I fall, break my bones, I will scream even louder. 'Cause I'm not dying alone.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to True Crime Unraveled. Well, now we've all seen the documents on the Idaho website. They don't look that big on the actual website, now do they? That 175-page redacted testimony document. This is what it looks like, all printed out. And that's exactly what I did today. I printed that 175-page document out because I've been finding stuff in it. Now, it's one thing to go to the website and extract like bits of truth from the actual documents on the website. It's completely different when you have these documents in front of you on paper. Like when they talk about the AT&T records. Let's get into that. This question is by Ann Taylor. Are these AT&T records related to a phone Mr. Koberger had? Yes, ma'am. All right. And in doing so, this affidavit, you have this working document, and I'm going to start with DM. If I say DM, do you know who I'm talking about? Yes, ma'am, I do. And she's one of the roommates. Is that right? The court, we're sealed. You can use the name. Miss Taylor, I can use the name trying to get a habit. By Miss Taylor. Question. This, of course, is redacted, but we all know who they're talking about. They're talking about Dylan Mortensen. Dylan Mortensen, who is she? She's one of the surviving roommates. And how many times was DM interviewed by law enforcement at the time you wrote this December 23rd report? If my memory serves, it was 4, I think 3 or 4. In the affidavit, you wrote a statement that she had heard Kaylee go upstairs and yell, "There's someone here," and run back downstairs. Is that correct? Yes, ma'am. And you cannot lie, guys. This is like right out of the freaking document. And you used the words she thought she heard. Do you remember that? This is when Hushley Jennings gets involved. Your Honor, I'm going to object. I'm objecting based on the scope of what this testimony is supposed to be. My understanding was it was limited solely to the issue of Franks and IGG. The court, I was just about to ask the same question. I don't recall the statements of DM being a subject of a motion to suppress separate from the Franks issue. Am I correct about that? That's correct, Your Honor. Okay, so we're not at a Franks hearing on that issue. The only issue we are at a Franks hearing is on the IGG. All right, well, let me rephrase. Let me start from a different place. I'll abstain the objection. Let's go to the part of the affidavit from December 23rd, AT&T 1. The part where you put in things particular to Brian Kohlberger, you put in the affidavit a traffic stop, I believe from August in Moscow, Idaho. Is that right? Yes, yes, ma'am. That traffic stop, was that on your radar before December 19th? Now here's the clincher. Here's what he says. No, ma'am. So he's admitting the traffic stop there in Moscow in August of 2022 was not on their radar. The next thing you relied on was a traffic stop at WSU. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Was that traffic stop on your radar before you knew Brian Koberger's name on December 19th? No, ma'am. So see, Brett Payne is basically stating that the traffic stop in August wasn't on their radar. The traffic stop there at WSU in Washington wasn't on the radar. You put in information about front license plates being missing from Pennsylvania cars. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Here we get into the video of the 1112 King Road. The 1112 video did not show enough of the vehicle that you could see whether it had a front license plate. Is that right? That sounds correct. Yes. So it was after you learned of Brian Koberger's name that it became a part of your affidavit. Is that right? Yes, ma'am. Let's talk about the vehicle, guys. The vehicle identification. For a minute, before I run back down through the rest of that affidavit after Brian was identified. So, see what she's trying to do here? She's trying to basically state that Brian wasn't on the radar before the 19th of December. And then they started fitting their little narrative together around Brian and his car. When you worked with Special Agent Emil to identify a vehicle, was there more than one vehicle he identified? I don't believe there was. If memory serves, it was just the Hyundai Elantra. Would you agree that he was most comfortable with the years 2011 to 2013? Miss Jennings. Object, Your Honor, for the same reason. I don't understand the scope or related to IGG. Miss Taylor, Your Honor, I'm going to ask for a little leeway on this one. I think it will be clear in about two questions. It is a sealed proceeding. I'll be arguing it at Frank's. I don't want to pollute the record, so approach. This is where they have a bench conference, guys. They looked for a 2011 to 2013. It was their bolo. The 2011 to 2013 was their be on the lookout. It was after Brian was identified by IGG they expanded the search. This is where I'm starting not to like Judge Hippler. That relates to what? It's going to relate to Frank's, but it has to do with the IGG. And when they identified him, I have about two more questions along this line. You have the separate Frank's motion regarding the scope of the car search. Absolutely. That we're not here for today. See how Judge Hippler's responding to the defense? I don't think he likes Ann Taylor. We're here for the IGG. I get the idea that if the IgG is suppressed, the warrants based on IgG is suppressed. That affects a lot of other things, right? But I don't think you need to get into the evidence of that at this point because it's part of the Franks. There's a separate Franks motion on that. Oh, and Taylor, there is absolutely is. Oh, no, there absolutely is. The next question I'm going to uh, get to in the affidavit after the IgG was the police in Pullman running the car, and he has laid it out in the affidavit after the IgG without stating it. So I'm doing the IgG part with him now. That car is a different year than the one the Bolo is for. See where she's going? The Bolo was for 2013. It wasn't for a 2015. All the way up to December 19th. And Brian was not on the radar until December 19th. That's as far as I'm going with the car at this hearing. Court counsel, I don't understand. This is Miss Jennings. I don't understand what that has to do with the IgG. It's part of a Frank's hearing related to vehicle identification. I understand her timeline, but I don't think that point has. But I think that point has already been made. This was when I was allowed to explore this witness since he's already here, and we've been paid. We paid for him to come here. This judge clearly in these transcripts, guys, in these transcripts from that sealed hearing, is a pro prosecution and pro law enforcement judge. And people have stated that on this channel, so has many others. But when you actually sit here, like I've been doing all day, this isn't the only document I've been going through. I've been going through the Lamine RE out in the alibi Lamine, and I found some very interesting things in there as well. Especially where the prosecution they're talking about the alibi. Even were the defendant to attempt to comply at this late point in time, the state is irrevocably prejudiced. It has now been over 2 years since the homicides occurred and since the defendant was charged. It would be unrealistic at this late date to expect the state to effectively investigate and respond to any or new additional alibi related disclosures, and they want the defendant to specify, you know, where he was the night of the killings, who he was with. They want names, phone numbers, and addresses of the people he was with if he was to bring an alibi defense. They are literally, the state is tying the hands of the defense. And it's never more clear, guys, than the state's motion in Lamont for alternative perpetrator evidence. And I've highlighted a few of the good parts. if the defendant proffers evidence which merely tends to mislead the jury that another person committed the crime, or the evidence is not relevant because it does not tend to make the defendant's involvement more probable or less probable, then it's within the trial court's discretion to find the evidence inadmissible. Mere inferences that another person could have committed the crime will most likely not be relevant, and if relevant, will still be subject to limitation provisions. I said all that to say this. This investigation is flawed. It's been flawed from day one. The MPD has been way over their heads from day one. And these transcripts prove it. They absolutely prove it. Because you have Brett Payne saying, I don't remember, I don't recall. He was made lead investigator in the first 24 hours of this case. And what does he do? Under direct cross-examination from the defense, asking him very simple questions. I don't remember, I don't recall, I have no recollection. The investigation in this case is a joke. It's sloppy. They had two unknown male DNAs, unknown male B and unknown male D. If in a real investigation, they would try to eliminate any DNA that comes into their possession. Not Brett Payne. Because he states in that 175-page document that I've been tearing apart today, they didn't want to upload the male DNAs because it would destroy the DNA on the knife sheath. That's not doing a thorough investigation. That's a rookie mistake made by a rookie lead investigator who was thrown in to that position in the first 24 hours of this crime. As well as DM's statements, they're not credible. She's admitted she was drunk that night, didn't know what was going on, didn't know if it was real or a dream. And then in her drunken state, she claims to have seen the perpetrator carrying a handheld vacuum cleaner. I'm telling you this, guys. He wasn't carrying a vacuum cleaner. Handheld or not, dustbuster or not, he was not carrying a vacuum cleaner. It was either a trash bag or a coat. This is why, if you're drunk, you should not be being interviewed where you state, I was drunk that night, didn't know it was real or a dream. I have no clue of anything. And she's telling this to investigators. Mowry and Gooch. And how is that credible? Especially with her statement, he was white. I don't know how he was white, but he was white. Not credible. And Bethany, she's a non-factor in this. She don't want to come back. She don't want to come. Yeah, she don't want to come back to the trial, and that's coming from her attorney. That she wants nothing to do with this case. She doesn't live in Idaho. She lives in Nevada, and she does not want to ever come back to Idaho. Okay, so have her testify remotely via Zoom in the courtroom. But I don't even think she's going to do that. She's out living her life. She's getting married soon, from what I heard. She's traveling. So don't be looking for Bethany to testify in this trial. And if Dylan does testify, it's not going to be substantive. It's just going to try to verify the timeline. That's the only reason why they would want her to testify, is validate the timeline of the crimes, which I don't even believe the crimes took place when they say they did. I think it was earlier, say around 3, because if you look at it, Kaylee's phone didn't go offline at 4:05 or 4:17. Her phone went offline at 2:56. And if you go back and look at the alcohol the band stop, the alcohol stop on Banfield, if you go back and look at that, there's a hell of a lot of activity going on around the house at that time. But according to Mr. Brett Payne, none of that matters. The only thing that matters is suspect vehicle 1 entering the area at 3:29. I mean, this guy doesn't even recall how many hours of videotape evidence he watched. Because yeah, he told Ann Taylor straight from the horse's mouth, I don't remember. I do not recall. Possibly, maybe Ann Taylor's trying to walk him into some type of perjury. Quite a possibility. And here's another thing: the 911 call. I had a lot of good questions about that call on my brother AR's live stream here a little while ago. The 911 call was a unconscious person call. And the question was, will it be played in trial? I hope it's played in trial so we can actually hear, like the 911 dispatcher said, that the chaotic call that was being passed around on who all was in that house. And if they release that call in the trial and play it in the trial, we will know exactly everyone who was in that house contaminating that crime scene before 911 was called. We'll get to know all their names. I'm pretty sure Hunter Johnson is one of them, and that unconscious person could have been for either Dylan or Bethany, because it was a grisly crime scene, so there was a lot of red substance all over the place, and that would put off a smell, like a really bad smell, especially because blood decays outside the body, and it has a coppery metallic smell. Imagine that smell for 8 hours without 911 being called. when those girls, especially Dylan, when she comes out that bedroom and gets a big waft of it, the stench is bad enough to make you want to vomit. Because even Brett Payne said when he walked into the home, it smelled of decomp because the bodies were starting to decompose. That's in the PCA that the house smelled of decomp when he walked in the door. So if that's true, how can Dylan and Bethany stand to be in that house with that smell? Could either one of them been the unconscious person called, or whoever was traipsing through that crime scene when Dylan called them over? Clearly, you could see Kaylee and Maddie are no longer with us. Did they even go up and check? Because now we're hearing all the doors were open. So if all the doors were open, that makes me wonder about the credibility of Hunter Johnson uh, shoving his way into Xana's bedroom. Because if the doors were open, now were they just unlocked and you can open them, or were they actually legitimate standing open where you could see it all? How are you going to say this is an unconscious person when you're walking into the room seeing all that blood and seeing Ethan and Xana laying there lifeless? And what I can't understand is you have Kaylee and Maddie in the house at that time. Why didn't Dylan call one of them if they couldn't get into Xana and Ethan's bedroom? Why didn't Dylan or whoever call upstairs to Maddie and Kaylee to see if they could come down and help get into uh, Xana's room? Why call outside help when you had two people upstairs? Unless you didn't know that unless you knew they were already gone. That's what I don't understand. You have Kaylee and Maddie upstairs. You claim you can't get into Xana's room, but you call outside people. You call the frats. You call the sororities. When you could have just tried to call Kaylee and Maddie to see if they could come down and help. Guys, I will never understand that. Why they're calling the frats and the sororities over to the house when all they had to do was check on Kaylee and Maddie upstairs to see if they could help get that block door open. Or maybe they knew they were already gone. And why it's such a grisly crime scene? Did the dog not have any traces of nothing on him? No blood, no DNA, and he was in laying on Kaylee's bed. But yet all the doors were open. How tight Kaylee and Murphy were. Don't you think Murphy would have went and checked on his master if all the doors were open? And if he would have checked on his master, then yes, he would have had blood all over him because he would want to lay by his master, which was Kaylee. I mean, yes, she shared the dog with Jack, but Art Bedge, the mayor of Moscow, stated very early on in this case that It was a crime of passion. Wasn't Kaylee? Didn't Kaylee break up with Jack about 3 weeks before this? It just makes you think. If you guys like this video, please hit that like button. While you're here, show some love and hit that subscribe button. This is Robert with True Crime Unraveled, and I want to give a shout out to my brother AR, Unfiltered Lucky. Tomorrow morning, I'll be on panel with Swamp Rose and Miss Potts, and we're going to have a very good discussion. You guys have a good night. This is True Crime Unraveled. I'm out. Peace. But